Good morning, and hopefully this morning we can bring a little bit out about Saul or Paul. So the title of this morning's lesson is Saul of Tarsus, the Unlikely Apostle. Let me get over here to Acts in the Bible. Read a little bit of the before that. Not for your, only for your benefit, for mine also. It's in Acts chapter 22 where the lesson comes from. Well, I'm trying to figure out what before this story is. Paul's apprehended by the Jews. I'll try to start up there. What that I understand that the charges was that Paul allowed a Gentile into the temple. So this is why that they had him apprehended. It starts out in chapter 22. It says, "Men, brethren, and fathers, hear ye the defense which I make now unto you." Paul was on trial before the Jews. He was in Jerusalem. And I think whenever I read this morning that this was before his third missionary and his last journey, which he ended up in Rome and was there for 2 years, I think, in Rome. And it talks about his journey there in previous chapters. That's where that he was on one of those islands and they were shipwrecked. And I know that all of you is familiar with where that he was shipwrecked. And he told me, he said that he had prayed and the Lord said that if you stay on board, you'll be saved. Because there was many of them that was wanting to jump overboard, and there was it goes to tell about the signs and wonders that followed Paul. They was accommodating to them whenever they were on that island at the shipwreck, if I remember right. And they were standing by a fire warming themselves, and Paul had been out getting wood. And I guess he was putting wood on the fire, and there was a snake there. And the people that lived there, they said, well, he's going to die, because they knew it was a venomous snake. But he did. And that helped to get their attention, and there was much healing, and many people saved on that island. I can't even remember the name of it. But before here he is in his defense. This is before he set off on his last missionary journey. And we know many other examples of how that the Gentiles, that they were saved and they believed on Christ. And even some of the Jews, and we've been studying in Acts. Acts is one, very, very good as far as knowing what the Apostle Paul, how that he preached. And I noticed a lot of times, I thought, what was his message? I know that after we go into the books, or in the letters that he had written to the churches, that he preached on how to conduct the church and how to conduct our life, and how that we should respect each other and love one another. But he many times used the story, and I thought about that myself, on how that how do we approach people that are lost? And we'll hear about this on Paul, that we need to, and I've heard Barry say it many times before, our own personal experience, what Christ had done for us, and how that a lot of times, or most times, that carries more weight with somebody that's lost than if we just spit out some Bible verses or something like that, which is good. You may need to know that, but they don't know any Bible. We are their Bible. And Paul told his story, how that he met Christ, and Christ blinded him on the road to Damascus, I believe. And how that he went to Ananias, and Ananias told him what he should do. So he's going to recount this before the Sanhedrin here in Jerusalem. I know that there's another one, which was Jesus, that was brought before them also. Now, I don't think that, of course, it was prophesied that Jesus did a lot of defense. And it said he was like a sheep to the slaughter. They brought him forward, and they beat him and crucified him for saying that his accusation was he was a blasphemer, and that he pretty much said that he was God. And they could not understand it, and that was definitely against the law. But we saw on the resurrection, and we saw what great love he had for us, and that he was God, and he proved it. So here we have Apostle Paul. Verse 3 in our lesson. I am verily a man which am a Jew, born in Tarsus, a city in Cilicia, yet brought up in this city at the feet of Gamaliel, and taught according to the perfect manner of the law of the fathers, and was zealous toward God, as ye all are this day. He was identifying with me. I'm a Jew, just like you, and know the law. I believe that Gamaliel was a respected Jewish teacher, very respected among the Jews. And so, in his defense, he was trying to get their attention so that they listened to his story and not think that he was just anybody that didn't know the law, that was trying to do something that was contrary to it. And I persecuted this way unto the death, binding and delivering into prison both men and women. Not only did he say that he knew the law, he was trying to enforce the law. And last week, that same one was holding the coats of those that stoned Stephen, if you remember last week's lesson. So he was approving of what that they did with Stephen. And we know that in some of these other letters that he had written, that he had a thorn in the flesh, and I think that this was his. I know a lot of people have a lot of different theories on it, but that the guilt that he felt for being a part of the deaths and the persecution of the ones the Christians that he had before been consented to. Then there's some, said maybe it was his blindness, but I know that it would be an awful thing to have been a part of the execution of somebody. I can't even imagine. So he definitely was, not only he was a student of the law, knew the law, but he was also an enforcer of the law.
Well, I think part of it is also, if you would think that what he did was, when he was persecuting those, he just knew he was absolutely right.
Right.
I mean, he knew he was on the side of the law, and he knew everything. But then later, when you find out that you wasn't right, that you wasn't on the correct side, that the things you was doing, that's I think is a big difference between his way when his conversion happened was, how bad would he feel to realize the things he had done was wrong? How it would have affected him even in his everyday life. It would affect trying to make up for the things you've done, but knowing that you're forgiven, but still, within ourselves, we think that we need to somehow atone for it.
Yeah. I have times whenever that I wonder, because those sins God forgiven, but I remember what kind of person that I was, and I can't keep from praising the Lord for forgiving, because I knew that I was deserving of hell. And but still, yet, I know that people say, well, that's in the past. But when the way that we learn throughout life is by my mistakes and from our experiences. And I can't keep from thanking the Lord enough for forgiving me for those. And I know that the Apostle Paul was very, very humble and understood what the way, which was right, for the wages of sin is death. But on the contrary, it says the gift of God is eternal life in Christ Jesus. All right. As also the high priest in verse 5 doth bear me witness, and all the estate of the elders, from whom also I received letters unto the brethren, and went to Damascus to bring them which were there bound into Jerusalem for punishment. So he was, like Barry was saying, he was just gung-ho about it. He was doing the right thing in his own understanding. I remember and I'm sure that y'all have witnessed to people that have brought up other people that were in the church, which, this is just a place for sinners that, that the Lord has forgiven. We all have sinned, it says. It comes short of the glory of God. But that's the one thing that always is what a person that is lost, and they want to say, well, what about this? What about that? And if you're not, if you don't understand what the Christ did for you, if you're not pretty well read, a lot of times you won't have an answer. I know when I was a young Christian, it caught me off guard. But as I got more mature and understood what that the Lord had done for us, then I could have an answer. But I'm sure that there's many people that you've ran into that would like to say, I'm just as good as that was. And my answer now is, yeah, you are good as just as good as what that person was before they met the Lord. And the same boat. It's the second boat. Bound for hell. Verse 6. And it came to pass that as I made my journey and was come nigh to Damascus, about noon. Right. Suddenly there shone from heaven a great light round about me. And I know that all of you are familiar with this story that he's telling. But this is what the Apostle Paul uses. It's like I was saying to start with. We can use our own personal experience and our conversion when we met the Lord and what that he's done for us as a witness, as a testimony to people that are lost. And and suddenly there shone from heaven a great light round about me. You all see how many people that was in all of this eclipse that happened last week. It was, wow, it's amazing. But I guess in an opposite respect, that the Apostle Paul was completely, it was a bright light. I don't know how bright it is, but I know that in the Bible it says that, Moses couldn't even look upon the face of the Lord, but only on the hinder parts of it, probably this train or whatever it is, his glory. And I'm sure that that's what this was. The glory of the Lord had come upon him there, and I fell to the ground in verse 7 and heard a voice saying unto me, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? So being a self-righteous man that Paul was, well, who am I? I'm not persecuting nobody that's in that kind of authority that would come and speak to me in this great bright light and the glory of it, where I'm sure that it blocked out the noonday sun, which is the brightest. And I answered, Who art thou, Lord? And he said unto me, I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom thou persecutest. Oh, well, that's who these Christians they were following this same Jesus. And he's like, and I'm sure that he had a great fear. Well, it brought him to the ground, didn't it? And anytime that in the Bible that people heard from God, they were in reverence and in great humbleness. And I'm sure that the Apostle Paul was here. He knew that this vision that he was having was of great, great authority. So it got his attention. Put that in respect to our own lives, and as far as our testimony, what did it take for the Lord to get your attention? That I know that I'm pretty hard-headed. Didn't want to believe. I knew what I wanted to do, and that's what I wanted to do. But there came a time in my life to where I was on the other end. I wasn't telling him what I wanted to do. Like I told you about my cousin that said he was cool with God. And I know that there's times that we want to negotiate with God. You know, before we got saved, before we understood that it's His way, not our way. But He does listen to our requests if we humble ourselves. We'll make like, all right, God, you do this, and I'll do that. And, you know, most of the time, if it does happen, we don't. We're just like, okay, well, that went through, and it's kind of like we had, I remember hearing stories about when that Gulf War came out back in the 90s, that they was having a prayer meeting here. I wasn't coming here at the time, but they had to bring out chairs to accommodate all the people that was here praying, because everybody knew, hey man, this is it. You know, the Lord's coming back, because they had always heard about that it would happen in the Mideast, and a lot of that prophecy is true. I don't understand all. I don't even claim to, but where are they at today? Christ didn't come, didn't return to pass judgment. He waited a little while longer. He had mercy, and every trial that comes up, you know, they get like, yeah, it ain't gonna happen. They start getting lax and not honoring God. So where are they? We've got plenty of chairs still to bring out. Where are they? And he goes on to tell them in verse 9, and they that were with me saw indeed the light and were afraid. But they heard not the voice of him that spake to them. So this was not for the people that was with Paul, but just for Paul alone, but they were witnesses of that light. So this is everything's supposed to be justified by witnesses. And Paul was telling them that he had plenty of witnesses that saw that light also. Verse 10, and I said, what shall I do, Lord? Well, that's the way I was. Lord, what do you want me to do? I was broken. Got down, I said, well, Lord, I ain't going to live my way no more. I'm just going to go ahead and live your way. And that's where he wants us to get, so that we can, so he can use us, so he can remake us into something that's not hard and stony heart, but a heart of flesh, it says, a tender heart, that we can love one another, and that we can, most of all, that we can love the Lord. But he had to get us to where that he could use us. And I see here that the Apostle Paul was in that position. What shall I do? I still do that today. Lord, what am I going to do? Been a lot of times, and he wants us to, that I thought I could solve that problem on my own. I'm still yet got a little bit of hard head in me. But then, whenever that the answer comes, after he gets me down to where that I'm just like, I don't know. And we leave it to the Lord, then he reveals his answer. And he says, like I told Barry there about, I said, why didn't we just go ahead and do that to start with? But anyway, we want to try to get ahead of God. And it always comes out better if we let God take care of it and we just listen instead of talking. And the Lord said unto me, arise, go into Damascus, and there it shall be told thee of all things which are appointed for thee to do. And when I could not see, in verse 11, for the glory of that light, being led by the hand of them that were with me, I came into Damascus. Well, he was a powerful man, and used to having people to, whatever he asked them to do, you know, those people that was traveling with him, I'm sure that they were, pretty much they probably had swords, and they were authorized to use them. And the Apostle Paul was over them. He was used to being a man of great authority. What's that song, Michael? I thought of myself a mighty big man. But now I can't even walk like the Apostle Paul does without holding to somebody's hand. But the song goes without holding into the Lord's hand, which is a good example. So the Apostle Paul was broken down, and we can see in our own lives that when we submitted ourselves unto the Lord, that then, and only then, will He lift us up. Verse 12. And one Ananias, a devout man according to the law, having a good report of all the Jews which dwelt there, came to me and stood and said unto me, Brother Saul, receive thy sight. In the same hour I looked up upon him. So he received his sight. But if you remember the story that we read in Acts, that Ananias had a vision from the Lord, and he knew that Saul had letters and was authority to arrest people, to take them to be judged for being a Christian. And Ananias was like, yeah, you want me to go there? And he said, yeah. So Ananias sent for him to come. I'm thinking about a different story here. Sorry. But anyway, Paul come to Ananias and received thy sight, and the same hour I looked upon him. Paul got his sight back. So whenever that we want to hear from the Lord and to receive His blessings, we have to do what He says we need to do. And he said, the God of our fathers hath chosen thee. This is what the Ananias said. That thou shouldest know His will and see that just one, and should hear the voice of His mouth. So this is what Ananias told Paul about what his calling was going to be. For thou shalt be His witness unto all men what thou hast seen and heard. And like I was saying, he used his testimony to witness to people about how that he come to meet Christ. And I think it's important for us also to share our testimony of what God has done for us, and that it gets down on a more personal term, because we can see maybe that somebody that we can witness to is having a hard time, and they need to hear that the Lord can help them through that hard time also. That's it. Okay. Okay, some of the questions over here, in the back. Anyway, the key text was, Ananias said, the God of our fathers has chosen thee, that thou shouldst know his will, and see that just one, and shouldst hear the voice of his mouth, for thou shalt be his witness unto all men of what that thou hast seen and heard. So Paul was, the apostle was doing that. He was witness to what he had seen. In that last part there, it says, into life. It says, every believer has a story of meeting Jesus. Write down a brief version of your own story of meeting Jesus and how God used personal weaknesses for good. So that's what that I got out of that. And if we need to relate what that Jesus has done for us and how that he gave us new life to help others along the way. All right, any questions? Barry can answer. He's not admitting that. Anybody have any questions? Comments?